for him. If you will, I'd like to take up the title this morning, Jacob Weeps. Do I have any scandal watchers in the room? I believe that I do. Because I am friends with some of you on Facebook and others of you I follow on Twitter, and I see your post on Thursday evenings. In this past season of Scandal, the writers decided to take on the task of showing us in a television series what things could look like in a different kind of world. In an episode airing in March, Brandon Parker is killed by the police around the corner from his home. He is accused of threatening his arresting officer with a knife, and the officer uses deadly force to end his life. Disturbed by the racial tension and possible backlash of the community, the police chief calls in none other than the baddest woman alive, Olivia Pope. Yes, she is called in to control the optics. When she arrives on the scene, Parker's body is still in the street and the crowd grows by the minute. After getting the rundown from the police chief, Pope and others are startled by the sound of one singular gunshot blasting into the thick, anxious Washington, D.C. air. It is Clarence Parker, Brandon's father, who stands with his shotgun drawn, demanding to speak with the officer who murdered his son. They try to talk him down, but he won't go anywhere until justice is served for his dead son. He wasn't there. He could not protect his son from the officer's bullets, and so he stood guard over the body of one whom he changed diapers and played catch. He stood there protecting what he could of his son. He stood there doing what fathers do, protecting his child. If you will, travel with me to one more scene, this time from the movie Lee Daniels, The Butler. One of the opening scenes shows the main character of the movie, Cecil Gaines, in the field with his parents picking cotton as sharecroppers. The son of the white owners of the land motions to Cecil's mother to meet him in the barn, where it is clear that he intends to do with her as he will, despite the fact that her husband and her son stand nearby. Cecil looks at his father as if to say, "You're not going to do anything, Daddy. You're just going to let this man do what he wants to do to my mother and your wife." The father hangs his head. He looks back at his son and he doesn't say anything, but he looks at the man who owns the plantation and he simply says, "Hey." After hearing those words, the gun is drawn and Cecil's father is dropped to the ground by one singular shot. Unable to protect his son, unable to protect his wife, unable to do what fathers and husbands do. This week we have witnessed one more tragedy in a long line of historical events. 9 people, one pastor and state senator, a librarian, a recent college graduate, and a missions coordinator, a speech coach, a city worker, and 3 faithful members of Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church gunned down while in Bible study. One more event that reminds us of a gloomy past and a nation's history that is anything but put to rest. Just a reminder that the insidious stranger lurks at the door, only awaiting a crack to slip in and remind us that we are here in the United States, a nation built on our backs, but still denies our lives. And I find myself thinking out loud, what does it mean to be a black father of black children in a white America? What does it mean to have children that you can't protect from the harsh realities of a racially tense and systematically unjust system? What does it mean when those of us who have been blessed by God to have skin ranging from the lightest hue to the darkest midnight cannot protect our most precious gifts? It is Father's Day. We celebrate all those hardworking men who have made the decision to step up and take on the task of rearing a child. Those who have decided to provide, discipline, teach, play with, love, guide, and protect with a fierceness that can only come from God. For every man who is, has, or will give a bike lesson. For every man that is, has, or will drop off a child at school. Pat on the back, hug when appropriate, spank when it's best, store money away for college, pay up when it's time for college, carry the child on his shoulders, take trips to the park, serve as a hero, be the strongest man in the room and even amongst all of their friends, be cooler than any superstar and then be lamer than any lame and then be cool once again. This one is for you. This is your day. But it seems, even as I celebrate my first Father's Day, to be cheapened. I can't help but think, if I do everything right, if Kendi grows to be a productive member of society, a well-adjusted woman who loves God and loves people, she can go to church and there's nothing I can do about it. These two images are burned into my mind. One, a father who stood shotgun in tow over the body of his dead son, and a father who stood up only to be shot down, unable to protect their children from an ugly American system and their lives and any others that look like them. Brothers and sisters, this morning Jacob can relate. If you'll flip to Genesis 37, you'll see a father mourning the loss of his son. He could not be there. He could not protect Joseph. He could not do what fathers do. Jacob is brought the news by his 10 eldest sons that they could not find their youngest brother. They found his cloak covered in blood and no body attached. If you're familiar with the story, then you know that this is a farce. Of course, they have sold their baby brother off into slavery. They were the ones that stuck him in the pit in the ground and sold him like a cheap household item to the first passerby. But dad only sees the garment. He tears his clothes, begins to weep. His favorite son is now lost, one he should have protected. He could not, and now the boy is gone. What do you do when a system separates you from yourself and conspires against you to take away your God-given right to protect your children? Jacob's 10 eldest sons created a self-perpetuating system of jealousy and anger against their younger brother. There was nothing Jacob could do. He sent Joseph out to meet his brothers in the field, believing that he would be saved. What do you do when a system of racial injustice, continued ignorance, and unjustified anger comes crashing down on the heads of your child? For each one of these people massacred in Emmanuel AME, they were somebody's children. Somebody's daddy has the same empty feeling this morning that Jacob felt, and mourning for us is appropriate. Even for us, physically removed from Charleston, South Carolina, we know that McKinney, Texas pool party is in Madison, Tennessee. We know that Tamir Rice's park is named Hadley and Hartman. We know that 137 Bullets is in Smyrna. And how do you mourn when you wish you could have done something? That is the reality for the black father in America. We can do everything right and everything come out wrong. Where did Cecil Gaines' father go wrong? When he stood up for what he should have been doing? How about Brandon Parker? Was he wrong to stand over the body of his child who lay lifeless in the street? Is Trayvon Martin's father wrong for going out across the nation and telling folks about what had happened to his son? What's wrong about it? Somebody tell me how it's wrong to stand up, and yet for Cecil Gaines and for Brandon Parker's dad, Clarence, one lost his child and the other lost his life. And it seems that as much as things have changed, they certainly remain the same. What do you do when the places that should be safe, should be sacred, are stripped of their inherent meaning, producing only the vilest of circumstances? Jacob sends his youngest son to his brothers. His sons, Jacob's sons, Joseph, is in safety. He goes to his brothers only to have his brothers come against him and steal their father's joy. In the very place where Joseph should have been safe. The very place he should have been able to lay his head without fear. In the place where he should have been able to rely on the fact that everything was going to be all right. Joseph, in the place of safety, is betrayed in the most egregious way, and Jacob weeps. What about these folk? These folk who just wanted to deepen their level of spirituality, who wanted to grow closer to God, who found themselves engaging in prayer and Bible study in a safe place, only to have that taken away, shot down in safety. We knew about the streets. We knew about the corners. We even knew about what took place in the schools, but who thought that 1963 16th Street Baptist Church, Birmingham, Alabama would have been resurrected, and my God, fathers could leave their churches mourning for their children because of what had happened in church, happened in safety, happened in the household of God, and Jacob weeps. A maniacal 21-year-old who wanted to start a race war gave Jacob a reason to weep. People around Ruth gave black fathers another reason to weep. It had been said by his friend that this racist, deranged man let others around him know his sadistic plan, but that they did not take him seriously. They stood on the sidelines protecting their best interests while people's lives were destroyed. They acted much like Reuben in this drama in Jacob's family. Reuben just stood on the sidelines, only doing what amounted to nothing. Reuben, who stood up and said, "Don't kill him," but did not do what was right. And so Ruth's parents are responsible. We may try to let them off the hook. The media may try to let them off the hook, but they bought the boy the gun. And they knew he was crazy. His friend is responsible because he heard him talking about what he wanted to do and knew that he had the means to accomplish what it was that he was speaking of, and he did nothing. Because he said that it was in his personal best interest to return the gun. Yes, I've heard it said that they belong to the church of Reuben. That they too are those who stand Reuben like on the sidelines, only doing half of the job. Yes, if Reuben is guilty, then they are too. Half-hearted acts of solidarity and justice proven time to be acts of injustice 99 and a half. Just won't do. And Jacob weeps. Separated from his son, with the belief that Joseph is dead, Jacob weeps. Black fathers all around this nation weep. Even if we have not lost any children of our own, we realize the tenuous nature of black fatherhood, of black children in a white America. We know that from the very beginning of our existence on this soil that we have had to live with the constant threat that our children might not come home, and there is nothing we can do about it. And maybe the solution is to stand like Clarence Parker with shotgun in tow. The truth is that we might save some, but we can't buy enough guns to protect our children from a ubiquitous system that is designed to separate us and beat us down. Certainly, we should stop and say, hey, like Cecil Gaines' father, but then there's the reality of our bodies being dropped to the ground. But we must be like both of these fathers, with a determination as strong, if not stronger, than any animal protecting its territory. I can see Clarence Parker standing over his son's lifeless body saying, "Justice for my boy." So even on this Father's Day, as we reflect, give memory to those who have passed, celebrate those who are here, there is a clarion call towards justice in a world filled with hate. Jacob weeps but we must stand and fight. We must mourn our losses, but we must stand and fight. We tear our clothes in disgust, but we must stand and fight. We dry our tears, but we must stand and fight. Our heads hang low, but we must stand and fight.
Come on up in here.
The fight for justice is not simply ours. But I remember, I believe it was the prophet Samuel who said, the battle is not mine. Rather, it was David who said it in the book of Samuel. The battle is not ours, but that it belongs to God. So this fight for justice is not simply ours, but it is God. For even as Jacob refused to be comforted by the presence of his children, those who were left, he is then comforted by the presence of Almighty God. For it is in times like this that God is closer than a brother, and that God is closer than we have ever felt before, and that it is only God that can dry our tears. It is God that provides the strength to continue life when grief would overcome, and it seems like the world should stand still and come crashing down. It is God who will wipe every tear, and it is God who answers every prayer. It is God who gives comfort when there is no joy. It is God who stands there even in the midnight hour. And so Jacob calls on the God of his fathers, even as we too this morning call on God. And as we call on God, even in the midst of mourning, even in the midst of sadness, even in the midst of all of what it means to be a black father of black children in a white America, this is where we stop and celebrate. For even as we are reminded that an insidious stranger lurks at the door waiting for a crack only to slip into do what insidious strangers do, we are reminded that Jacob's story is not over at the 36th verse. We are reminded that God is a God of reunion and of reconciliation. We are reminded that Jacob sees Joseph again, and the plan to destroy him meant nothing in the end. If you recall, it was Joseph who found himself saying to his brothers that you meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. We are reminded that even as Jacob weeps, we don't mourn as them who have no hope. We are reminded that even as the symbol of hatred and injustice still flies high over the state capital of South Carolina and many of the former states of the Confederacy, that we serve a God who counts the very hairs on our head, and that there is a symbol of reunion, strength, justice, and peace, a symbol that is stained with blood. We are reminded, even a nation that devalues our lives, that God even knows the birds that fly through the air. We are reminded that God will exalt every valley, that God will bring every mountain low, that God will make every crooked place straight, that God will have the lion to lay down with the lamb, and that the people of God will stand on God's holy mountain. We are reminded that even in a system of injustice, that God is on the side of the oppressed, and the God who calls us to justice is God himself, all by himself, and that this God too is just. We are reminded that the trump shall sound, and all who are dead in Christ shall meet him in the sky. We are reminded that we await a great getting up morning where we shall sing, fare ye well, oh fare ye well, soon I'll be done with the troubles of the world. We are reminded that when we all get to heaven, oh what a day of rejoicing that will be, that when we all get there, there's a reunion in sight, that when we get there, every wrong will be made right, that when we get there, our darkness will give way to God's God's light, that when we get there, injustice will be over. Soon we'll be done with the troubles of the world. That when we get there, in the great getting up morning, we'll sing fare you well, fare you well. Well, good morning, saints. I bid you adieu. Jacob's weeps, and so do we. But we can celebrate this morning because our Father has provided for us. We can celebrate this morning because our God has protected us. Our God has shielded us. Our God is there in the midnight hour. We can celebrate this morning because we anticipate a reunion, and things might not be right, but I'll get to meet Senator Clementa Pinckney. I'll see Addie Mae Collins from the Birmingham Street, 16th Street in Birmingham. I'll shake hands with Sharonda Coleman Singleton. I'll slap five with Cynthia Wellesley. I'll fist bump with Tawanza Sanders. And when we all get to heaven, what a day